Hello and welcome back to another episode of Sharissa Reads. For this episode, I have chosen the book The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. There's actually a book called The Fifth Agreement and another book written by him called The Mastery of Love that maybe I'll review on another episode. But I wanted to start here because we're all looking for the rules right now for how to be treating each other and how to be kind. And I think it's important that we start with ourselves and start inside of this house of how to treat ourselves and how to be kind and how to love ourselves. And I love this book. Similar to episode 3 where I was giving you a guidebook through the prophet, this guidebook is from the Toltec, which is called the Toltec. So it's a Toltec wisdom book. And the Toltec were known throughout southern Mexico as women and men of knowledge. So these were people who came way before us, and they were the storytellers. They held the knowledge for their towns. So this book was written by somebody, Don Miguel Ruiz, who had the information passed down from his ancestors on how to treat ourselves and how to go about living this complicated human life that we're living, and the little steps that he gave us. And the four agreements are actually four agreements that we make with ourselves. So throughout the book, he explains what the four agreements are, and in the beginning of the book, he tells us why we would need to make these agreements with ourselves. Similar to self-help books, in the beginning of this book, he talks about how we need to make changes in our lives, and we need to have growth in our lives, and we need to have that like evolution of our spirit as we get older and we start to understand ourselves a little bit better, and we need those guides in order to do that. And basically what he says in the beginning of this book is it's almost impossible to do that. It's impossible to make those changes. It's impossible to change for yourself. It's impossible to change other people. It is something that we have to work on with ourselves. And in order to get rid of all of these bad stories that we have told ourselves and all of the structures of beliefs that we've set up, he says that we'd have to go through all this process of like unpacking all of that. Or we can make these four agreements to ourselves, and if we stick to them, we can have that similar sense of peace and nirvana and reaching that place of calm within our own human life. So the four agreements that he uses he talks about in the book, I loved so much that I had a friend of mine, Jeanette, make this for me, and I hang this in my living room, and these are the four agreements. So be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personal, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. And with all four of these things in mind, with the always do your best as your last one, you're doing everything that you can do in your power to hold these agreements for yourself. And if you're being impeccable with your word, if you're paying attention and you're being cautious about the things that you say out and you put out into the world, and also the things that we say to ourselves, that monkey mind, even before I started doing these book reviews just a couple of days ago, I was fighting with myself every single day. I had the idea weeks ago, and it was something that I struggled to even sit in front of the camera and say, like, this is the thing that I want to talk about, because mostly I figured, like, who would want to pay attention to it? But the words that I was using to myself were pretty negative. They were pretty much like a lot of negative self-talk. I call that, and other authors have called that the monkey mind, or that monkey brain. Those like demon monkeys that are coming up and saying like you're not good enough and you're not going to be good enough. And that is the very first agreement that this book and the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz talks about. He says, be impeccable with your word. And that is not just the words that we put out, but it's the words that we say to ourselves. Just to backtrack a little bit, I want to share in the very beginning of this book that he talks about the fact that we've made agreements to ourselves. We've already done this for our entire life. We've made agreements that we would live a certain way. I'm a female. I told myself that I would be smaller. I wouldn't be as noticeable. I physically shrank to fit into an environment that I felt that I was not comfortable in, and felt like I was taking up space, and that like my breathing oxygen was taking away from other people's breathing oxygen. So I had already made all of these agreements to myself of how I was going to live my life, and I really didn't have any choice in the matter. So in the book, in the second chapter technically, The Domestication and the Dream of the Planet, he says, we didn't even choose our own name. As children, we didn't have the opportunity to choose our beliefs, but we agreed with the information that was passed to us from the dream of the planet via other humans. He goes on to say, as soon as we agreed, we believed it, and we called this faith. To have faith is to believe unconditionally. So I'm thinking to myself of all the beliefs that I had in place before I was probably even 5 years old. Things that I would just really held on to as who I was as a person, who I was as a female, who I was allowed to show up as in the planet, on the planet. And in this book, he says, we've already made all of these agreements. We've already told ourselves that we would do these things. So he says, soon we became afraid of being punished and also afraid of not receiving rewards. So if we're doing the thing in our environment that goes against what we've told ourselves or what our belief is, then we would have been punished for it. So as a kid growing up, I was told that I wasn't to talk to people around me unless someone talked to me first. So don't speak unless you're spoken to was a very common thing that came up in my house. So it makes a lot of sense to me that my thyroid eventually kind of gave out. Like this area of my body was just holding back, biting my tongue constantly because I wasn't allowed to have a voice. And so I had that belief system. And he's saying like, these are the beliefs that we had already built in before we even knew we could be anything else. So he says, we start pretending to be what we are not, just to please others, just to be good enough for someone else. So we start acting. So, in all of that, he says, we've made all these agreements to ourselves already. We've already done that. We can't go back. But we can go forward by setting these 4 basic agreements to ourselves in order to withhold some sort of like new chapter for ourselves, a new beginning, rather than going back and rewriting all of those things that we've already trained ourselves to do, the training of human nature. Now he talks about how to do better by yourself going forward. So the first one, be impeccable with your word. That's agreement number 1. And being impeccable with your word, like I said before, is not just what you say, not just what you say to other people. Words have power. Words have meaning. We know when we were kids and you come home and you'd be like, Mom, so-and-so said this about me. It hurt so bad. It would hurt my feelings, right? Like it would get into my core and people would say things like, words, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words may never hurt me. That is a straight up lie because words hurt. Right? And I know because I have been that person that has hurt people with words, and I have been hurt by words as well. And so much so to the fact that people who have hurt me, I've had like panic attacks from being called by those people. Like if they're like calling me on my phone or texting me, like if I've been hurt by somebody's words, it physically affects my body later on. And my body remembers. It remembers every single thing. So be impeccable with your words. So not just what goes out, but also the things, those words that you're thinking to yourself. For me, even starting this and coming on here and saying like, this is what I think about books. I love to read. I hope you like what I have to say about them. But even to myself in my own head, right before I even hit this button, it's like, why would anybody want to listen to you? You just need to like, bop, 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 you're, whatever. Anyways, fight those words. Stop them mid-sentence. You don't owe your thoughts anything. You can just stop them as soon as they come into your head and say like, oh no, I don't think I'll entertain you today. And that's part of being impeccable with your word. Not just to your outer community, which we gotta be better about too, but also to ourselves. And it starts with ourselves. The nicer you are to yourself, the nicer you're gonna be to everybody else, because you'll be thinking better thoughts about yourself and therefore feeling like other people around you deserve the same type of treatment. The next one is not to take anything personally. This, on the surface, sounds like, don't take it personal. Don't be so personal about it. But what it actually means is that we all are injured in our own ways. We all have our own hurts and our own pain and our own trauma and our own triggers. Specifically, we have our own triggers. Meaning, for me, somebody might walk into the room that has like a perfume on that reminds me of a traumatic or abusive situation that took place in my life. That might trigger my emotions, trigger the way I'm feeling, and kind of even ruin my day a little bit, make me tired, make me need to like go lay down and take a break, take space. We all have our own triggers. So the thing that we're saying, the thing that we're doing, the things that we're experiencing, other people's experiences in the world, we have to not take that so personally, right? So if someone comes in and they're raging at you it maybe has nothing to do with you. It maybe has all to do with their own triggers and their own feelings and their own fears and their own mindset, and kind of trying to put that projection onto you. So that's really where he's going with don't take anything personal. It's not just like that, oh, don't take it personal, I'm being mean to you, but like, oh, you're so sensitive. No, this is, we're all dealing with our own things, and sometimes when someone says something to you, it doesn't have anything to do with you. It has only to do with their own insecurities, their own pain, their own trauma, and that's what he means by don't take it personally. The next one kind of goes along right with that, with don't make assumptions. When we just fill in the blanks for ourselves and tell ourselves like, this is the way it is because this is the situation as I saw it, we're kind of making assumptions and filling in the blanks. And it's good to kind of ask more questions. Like for me, this came up really big in my relationship, where I needed to ask what my husband meant by saying things like, you came in and were like, the house is a mess. And in my head, I was like, you're a failure of a wife. You can't keep your crap together. Like, your only job is to keep the house clean, and you're not. And so I would say to him, it's like, is that what you meant? And he was, every single time he would like laugh, and not like laugh, but like, I can't believe you would think I would say that or think that about you. I just was like making an observation, but I would take it, like make all the assumptions. And then my ego would go, my mind would be spinning of like, oh, I gotta, like, how dare you? But really it was just, like observations, but taking all of that personally, making the assumptions, and then filling in the blanks. It doesn't always work out because our thoughts sometimes are not very kind. Like, I know that for a fact, that sometimes my thoughts are not very kind. And when I start going down to that, like, what did he mean when he said this? My thoughts will give me lots and lots of explanations, but if I just ask and get the clarity, sometimes I can be like, you did mean that, you blah, blah, blah. Or I can just be like, okay, calm down, we're good. The last one is always do your best. And this goes back into all of these that we're saying, like, be impeccable with your word. Don't take it personally, and don't make assumptions. But when you do these things and you hurt someone's feelings and you take it personally and you make assumptions and fill in the blanks, that's okay. Just recognize that you're doing your best and that you're going to continue to do your best throughout this process. And this is a journey, right? Our whole life is just a journey, and we're just learning as we go. And each new time we pick up a new skill, we just don't repeat the behaviors the next time. And that is what this whole book is about. It's just very kind, very gracious, very loving, very much come back to home, fix what's here so that you can be kind and put out into the world even more good. Yay, such a good book. These are all my bedside books. I'm back in my bed so that I can show you my bedside books. And this one I refer back to all the time because it's just full of all kinds of gems. It's just like all kinds of little things. And I gotta have the notes, and I gotta like recognize it and learn. It says, when you walk away, and this is our image of perfect. And, just all these little bits and pieces of little nuggets every time I need a little something. So get this book, read this book. If you haven't already, if you have it, go get it off your shelf and read it again, because you'll probably get something completely brand new out of it. And yeah, maybe put it on your wall. Maybe like get it framed and just like always have your 4 agreements with you at all times. I hope you guys have a great week.